Welcome to the Autonomous IT podcast. Today's episode is the Heroes of IT, where we chat with people who are our heroes of IT about everything IT, operations, and security. Welcome, Shawn. It's great to have you here.
Well, thanks, Ashley. Good to be here as well.
Well, why don't we start off on getting a rundown of how you use Automox?
So for us, Automox replaced a previous software product, and over time, I noticed that product did not really innovate. They were pretty stagnant. So Automox came along, I believe, as a blind cold call, one of the many that anyone in the IT field gets. It's just the nature of the business, and it really struck a chord as a area in the business operation that was kind of just not covered. Besides the remote support, which was a critical component, the patching is just phenomenal. The ability for me to not just patch operating systems, but different software components, be they browsers, peripheral applications, drivers, Logitech, so forth, OEM, so Dell, HP, Lenovo's, to have all those under one dashboard where I can push them out, review them, see what's critical. It really cuts into the small everyday items that I no longer have to do manually. So I'm not jumping between machines. I can push them out from one location, and it really is a time saver.
Yeah, definitely. I was chatting with someone recently, and we were talking about the benefits of having an endpoint management tool built solely for the purpose of endpoint management. And I think that's one of the differences in Automox compared to a lot of competitors out there is that all of the resources that are being poured back into the product are going solely towards patching, solely towards configuration, solely towards endpoint management, and it's not being used for anything else.
Yeah, and the client itself is very thin, so the end users don't even know it's there. It's not a resource hog. It's not obviously conflicting with anything. The scans are very seamless. So when I run a scan, there's no impact on the end user, which is critical, especially in this day and age where it seems like Windows and then you pile on everything else, your actual MDR solutions, XDR, all the buzzwords, and then you plug on a remote management. You're really bogging down the system. Automox is very thin. There's virtually no impact, and the client itself seems to run pretty autonomously, where I don't have to manage and reinstall or worry about corrupted files or so forth. And all the instances that we've pushed out, I think we've had one client that actually had a problem. And that ended up being a .NET framework update that was conflicting with the Automox client. So it really wasn't an issue with the software itself.
Yeah, that's awesome. We also love to hear the word autonomously. That's definitely a buzzword around here.
Yep, it is.
Awesome. Well, every month, Automox in our podcast, we talk about a certain theme. So whether that's in CISO IT and our CISO talking about that theme, or product talk and how our product fits into that theme. This month's theme, it's very timely. We're talking about things that we're thankful for in our IT professionals' lives. So is there anyone that has made an impact on your life as an IT professional that you're thankful for?
I mean, really just I hate to call it the circle of friends, but after 20 years in the field, kind of the people I know in the space, and that can be vendors, former colleagues, current colleagues, even old educational resources. So from my time in college, I made connections in the research space that I've kept to this day. Really just having that wide range of individuals I can lean on. There's been a saying that's stuck with me forever: is half of life is who you know, the other half is how you know them. And I can reach out for vendor recommendations, software recommendations. Security is obviously a huge component these days, so I can reach out and say, what trends are we seeing? Because the space has really changed, especially the events of the last 4 years, beyond what a single person can manage. So gone are the days of one individual able to manage all aspects. You almost have to pick and choose what experts you want to let in. So do you want to let in a security expert to manage or to advise? Do you want to let in a hardware expert to narrow down your field of vendors? It's just a huge space, and I'm thankful for all those resources that I can call upon, formally or informally. If there's a formal vendor agreement, or if it's just something simple as a LinkedIn message, to reach out and kind of get that information. And it goes both ways. So I have people that actually had one last week reached out to me for a kind of a vendor review for they were using these resources and what I thought of them. And I said, not necessarily to stick with one, but look at the pros and cons of each and see what fits your organization. So if one vendor does something you like, you don't necessarily have to use them for everything. You can just use them for that component, be it hardware or software or wireless support, for example. It's a big thing with them. So just thankful for everyone that I can lean on for anything I need.
Yeah, that's awesome. You mentioned research and in college, did you study anything or research anything that led you to the career that you have today?
So it's actually funny. In a family orientated way, it kind of goes generational. So my grandfather was a mechanical engineer. My father was an electrical engineer. I was initially going to be a computer engineer, which
Mhm.
seemed like a logical progression. Getting into that in that coursework, I understood that it really wasn't what I wanted to be, and also the market for positions was very small. We had many applicants, and I decided I want to get in more general IT field, networking security, software deployments, that sort of thing. And I've done a bunch of things over the years, project management, application deployments, a bunch of stuff with government contracts and so forth. So general IT is kind of where I phased everything. And initially, when I started my college career, that was a field that was seen as dying out. And if you wanted to get into general, it was best to grab a 2-year degree and then search your way up. So certificates for the different vendors, certificates for the different trades, and like your A plus plus, or you do Cisco certifications. And one of the things I did through college was after I grabbed my 2-year and I was moving to my bachelor's, I actually worked in IT. So I was IT for a heavy industry company, and I was running their stuff while going to college. I was able to set on design meetings for a bachelor's degree that didn't yet exist. So after I graduated, moved into the professional world more formally than I had been doing during college. Obviously, I had more time then. I started to see individuals with that degree that I had sat on the design meetings for. And it was very reflective to say, oh,
Yeah.
you have that degree that I assisted in some small way to design and build based on what I was seeing as I was working in IT at the time. So that was definitely interesting to be like, I built that to a little tiny part.
Yeah, it's like a full circle moment. That's awesome. I'm sure those IT professionals today are very thankful for that.
Yeah, and the degree still exists. The program has matured over time, and I've kept in touch. I've done a few things with alumni events, like ice cream socials and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
it's always interesting to see how the field has changed. And I'm always shocked at those people that made it big through little tiny startups that I was like, oh, I never would have thought of that idea. Like similar stuff to like Dropbox and Meta and all those companies that started with dorm garage sort of projects, and then they boomed. I've met a few individuals that have taken those risks and had great rewards, and it's always interesting to be like, oh, I served ice cream with that guy 2 years ago, and now he's up doing TED Talks, and oh, missed
Yeah,
opportunities.
definitely. Yeah, I've seen that a lot through my own LinkedIn, where people have just come up with these incredible ideas that are, giving back to the community and, pioneering new tech. I think Drizzly was a pretty famous company to come out of my college, and it's kind of really inspiring to know that you're around that flow of ideas and genius, and there's so many different opportunities out there. Pivoting off of that, is there any tool that's made your life in IT easier that you're particularly thankful for?
Uh, I mean, the trend, especially over the last couple of years, has been to push more and more to cell phones, mobile devices. So the ability not to be, and I'm going to take this as kind of a broad stroke sort of question and
Yeah.
answer. The ability to take stuff off grid. So I'm not attached to a laptop. I'm not attached to a desktop to answer stuff on the fly. And I think I'll speak for most IT professionals. This is a blessing and a curse. So no longer do I have to run to a laptop for probably about 95% of the fires. And that allows kind of a freer existence, but it's also a curse because you're also connected. The perfect example I have continuously is, heaven forbid I get a day off and I'm out doing something uh, that can still be connected in a way to putting out fires, answering calls. I mean, I've been out in the middle of the woods and on a Zoom meeting, and I have one in particular. I remember I was sitting on the edge of a cornfield and I was on a call about recruiting, and it was windy and the noise cancellation couldn't quite keep up. And they're like, "Where are you at?" I'm like, "Well, I'm on the edge of a cornfield about 40 miles northwest of you." Like, "Oh, why'd you take the call?" Like, "You said it was important."
Yeah.
So pushing stuff more to cell phones would probably be my answer. And just if I'm out, I can do a quick fix, reset a password, review something and forward it on, as opposed to either rushing home or uh, damming up work for later. So when I get home, there's a whole bunch of stuff to do. I can kind of hit stuff on the fly.
Yeah, definitely. I think that kind of similar in that vein, I help out with the team that's responsible for, we call them our vulnerability communications. So, when there's a log4j out in the world or like an AnyDesk breach or things like that have popped up on the world, and they most often happen on a Friday after everyone's already, started their weekend. I think that something as simple as like having Slack on your phone and
Yep.
seeing that come through from someone who's maybe still working, like still on the West Coast, and you're able to start like, okay, let's prioritize this. Let's start to work on this. This is what needs to be started in motion before you can get back to the laptop can be, I mean, in the IT world, I think having things being ready just, a couple of minutes earlier is so critical.
Yep. Just adding bits and pieces back and forth. I mean, not necessarily that you can jump on a call or you have the full screen to work with to, digest the log or something like that, but just to, you know, kind of get the process started. I always say that, first thing I do in the morning is turn my data on, be it wireless or my 4G, and to see what emails have come through. So then I can start the chain. I can answer stuff. I can say yes. If you're already in the office and you're looking for a laptop bag, it's on this shelf. So stuff is not just piled up waiting for me when I get in.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation. I love having these conversations around the US Thanksgiving. I know Canada has their Thanksgiving a little bit earlier in the fall. But very grateful to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining and answering all of our questions.